Do you ever wish you had a 24-hour herdsperson who never showed up late, never complained, and picked up on a problem with the cow better than you could? Well, that's what automation has done for Jessica Pralle Trimner, the dairy manager at Miltrim Farms in Athens, Wisconsin, home to 30 Lely A5 milking robots and 1,800 cows under one roof. And that's alongside a 1,400 cow conventional herringbone parlor and freestall facility right at the same site. So how has technology and data changed the game for this dairy manager? Well, let's listen to this Up-Level Dairy podcast to find out. This is the Up-Level Dairy podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. And I met up with Jessica at Miltrim Farms Event Center, the Milkhaus, conveniently located attached to that robot barn, to talk about the suite of technology that allows her team to focus on the right data, the right cows, and at the right time. We talk about using real-time data to transform transition cow management, empowering employees with data-driven insights, and the grouping strategy that has pushed the envelope on elite performance. Plus, we catch up with Jessica about her one word for 2024, presence. And just like the tech and their collars, this episode is part of our High Performance Mindset series powered by NEDAP. NEDAP is future-proofing dairy farms by revolutionizing cow-side care through technologies and activity monitoring, cow locating, milk metering, and identification. Listen for more episodes in this series and join me and Jessica in the Milkhaus at Miltrim Farms.
I'm here at Miltrim Farms as a dairy manager, working with cows every day, working with people every day, and I'm just grateful for the facilities I have to work in and the people that I get to work with every day. We work with a ton of data. I mean, for a long time, I think that data and technology age, like I still remember my first job out of college, like I had teammates who didn't know how to use Microsoft Word, let alone run Dairy Comp. And now it's like, holy smokes, like I've come night and day from where I started on Dairy Comp. My parents have had it since I was a little girl, but it was just, I could look up my favorite cow and see how she was doing. And now it's like, okay, let's start tracking some trends. Like how is repro performing throughout seasons? And then too, we're going to talk about like how does it perform across two different facilities and what does that look like and how did we get to those points? But then it comes down to different population management and managing my parlor and managing my robots. So I utilize like tons of different platforms every day, just analyzing my data differently and consultants who help make sure that I'm honing in on the right things and the right cows at the right time.
Ooh, and I'm excited to dig more into what that means, Jess, digging into the right data with the right cows at the right time. And before we get into that, just take a moment and explain the unique setup that you have here at Miltrim Farms that's all on one site.
Yes, so Miltrim Farms, like all dairies, started at a very small size. And in 1988, a partnership began between my husband's aunt and uncle as well as his parents and his grandparents. And we have grown along through the stages to where we are today, milking 3,200 cows, 1,400 of which are milked in our original double 24 herringbone parlor. And the last 1,800 cows are milked by 30 Lely A5 robots.
And that's where you spend most of your time, right?
Yes, I try to spend as much time as I can in the barn with the people and the cows, and I get to see a lot of different depth. And I think the best part of my job is I have two different facilities, so I can compare and contrast and really get the best of both worlds on a data side as well as the cow side and making accurate decisions, whether it's vaccine protocols or repro programs or just trying to push different limits. So I really enjoy the opportunities I have by having two facilities.
Yeah, and so within two facilities, so we are right here as we speak right now, right next door to the Lely robot facility. And through Lely, you have collars on the cows with the NEDAP technology in them. But just compare and contrast for a moment the tech that is here at the robot dairy on this site and what you have compared to what's at the conventional parlor that's just up the hill.
Yes, so technology for us really hit skyrocketed, not even hit, skyrocketed when we built the robot facility here in 2019. Up until then, we had used just parlor systems to monitor and manage cows, and then good old-fashioned training, looking for on and off cows. And I think we had done a really good job of managing cows in that aspect. And then once we put the collars on, and we use them a lot for sorting. Like basically the collars and the gates, they're a 24-hour herdsman that I have here, but they alert me efficiently to cows that I need to look at. So I think like a huge thing that we're going to talk about too is finding the right cows at the right time. Knowing when she's off before she knows she's off by tracking activity, rumination data, as well as then too, like the most critical time and the time that costs us money is days open, and making sure that we're getting that cow bred in an efficient amount of time. So we have that all here in the robot barn. And I'm a little jealous because it doesn't connect quite to our fresh cows or across to the parlor. So in the parlor, we get milk weights every day, and then I'm the activity monitoring system, and the other barn is managing the data, looking at my deviation reports, and then just walking cows and like really having a keen eye for what look is good and what look is like, hey, let's monitor and catch up later, and then making sure too that my people can understand those key concepts. But yes, I think we're getting to that point where we've seen a lot of benefits, like other dairies that have put these technologies in, and the critical times, that transition period, if we can track them better, if we can keep their lockup times even more efficient, that's just better for the cow, and it keeps her comfortable. And then too, especially in the robot barn with the sort pens, we're only interacting with a small population of cows versus the whole population. So it just keeps our cow touches very small and lets cows be cows.
You said something interesting, Jessica, and that was you compared having the sort gates and the tech system set up to be basically your 24-hour herdsman that's able to flag cows, sort them, and already provide you with a base knowledge of what you need to pay attention to, give some extra care to, divert your employee attention to. And so I think that's really a great way to look at the implementation of technology. But I want you to just go back to what you've been, and that is the critical components of the transition period, and how having the monitoring systems and the tech and the data have helped you to really take that time period, that most critical time period in that cow's early lactation, and to be able to just make the most of that time in her life and help her get through potential setbacks before they even start. What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so that's actually like the most exciting part. And we've made a lot of fine-tuned changes because of reading and reacting. It's no different than sports, wrestling, basketball, football. Like, got to read the defense and know how to be preventative and proactive about that, which way you're attacking it. So for us, when we started with the robots, we were heavily utilizing the collars, and cows were coming down 24 hours after freshening, 24, 48, and we were just seeing them take off in a different aspect that wasn't maybe quite how we wanted them to take off, but we wanted them to get those milkings in, because we know how critical, especially fresh heifers and cows, just getting that extra pressure off will help stimulate more growth in that mammary tissue, and also makes them function a lot healthier because they don't have to deal with extra inflammation. So we were pushing for the right things, but we could tell through the activity and the feed data that cows their stomachs weren't quite ready to take that leap into a more pelleted program. They weren't quite hitting the bunks like we wanted them to, so we actually backed off the time period where they're coming down. And so now they stay in the parlor for 2 weeks with the other parlor cows before we bring them down. So that gives them just more time. They're relaxed when they come down. They've got that fill back, that stomach mobility is ready. And then they come down here and they catch up like any cow. They go right out into the group pen and they're eating. We don't see them very often, but there's a lot of sensors too. So if there was anything that would come up within that first 24-hour period, that cow is coming back to us, whether it's feed, it'll give us ketosis suspect alerts as well. And that's the great thing about having not only the collars, but also the milking system tied to that. So we get to see the data fully versus trying some systems not translating that data and then you still having to put the pieces together. So I think that's been like the biggest thing for us on a transition side is utilizing the tool, but not forgetting the key things that help a cow stay healthy. And a lot of that is consistency, and that's consistency in diet, pen moves, but make sure you're reading that defense. And when she's saying, hold up, like I need to step back, we need to provide that support. So I think we've made really good changes because we saw that data, but then reminded it's no different than without the collar. We just need to read them more efficiently, and that gets harder. And I think that's going to continue to be something as we continue down new generations of farmers and employees. Like, we're really good when it comes to apps and phones and versus reading cows. Like, that takes time. It took me 20 years, and I was really good when I was 5 just catching fresh cows, but you start talking about transition cows and like just the different intricacies that you don't quite understand at that level, and then you go to school and you learn about it. So just trying to make sure that I keep all of the data relatable to my employees so that way they can read and react, but also know like, hey, this is just a stepping stone here, let's not overdo it, and then she comes back to us later.
You said a lot of interesting statements in what you just shared, Jessica, and I think one of them that sticks out is the way that you've learned to decide which pieces of data, specifically in this case for transition cows, fresh cows, and turn it into something that employees can understand and take action on. And so what has that process been like for you of getting employees up to speed with the tools that are available and the opportunities that having some information that's in real time available?
Yeah, so like I said, it's at our fingertips every day, whether you're using Dairy Comp, the platform, or even the Horizon app. So just getting them comfortable with where to find the data and how to enter the things in order to pull the right data out. And making sure your data is working, that's huge. Like, we have RFID buttons on the cows going to the parlor. If those aren't reading, we're not getting accurate milk weights. If we're not waiting for the parlor to cycle up, we're not getting accurate data. So always making sure that that data is coming to you fresh and accurately, and then just explaining the processes. For the most part, we work as a team across both facilities, but we do have some people that stay pretty remotely in those areas because that is their true skilled area. And I have one young man who is like my right hand, and he goes back and forth, and he's like, Jess, I don't know why we haven't gotten these collars on the fresh cows, because you go down in the robot barn, that work is so easy. Like, I know what I have to do. Like, and it's in 5, like I spend more time on the computer than I do next to the cows. And then we explain it like that. Like, this helps you to also identify, because when you've already looked through those reports and you see what those cows look like, you're taking that data back to fresh cows and being like, this is what this cow looked like. This is what I need to be looking for when I'm checking her out. So I think it's a process of training those different points, but always making sure the data is accurate, and then just not forgetting, again, like the key signs. Like, you have to listen to her, because she's not going to tell you. I mean, sometimes the orneriest ones are the ones that you don't realize are sick because they're like headstrong, and those are the ones that were like, collars yes, because you can't lie to me with the collar. So but too, then we've been really pushing on breeding programs, and sometimes you have to take a little bit closer look at that data. We'll do a lot of pen moves, and that's when you see most of your like flags come up on certain cows that it's like, yeah, she's 150 days pregnant, like, but she spiked because she moved into the late lactation pen. So just knowing how to read and react to some data based on different things, because we can only sensitize the data so much before we start losing out on some other opportunities. So I think that's the biggest thing, is making sure that they know how to use the tools when they have them, but still reading the cow, making sure like where she's at in her cycle, and just following her all the way through, and then utilizing that data to make those keen decisions and knowing what steps to take after that. So it's really made us efficient, but like I said, they are ready for collars in the other barn. It's just making sure that it's the right time and right investment for us, but we are very close.
You just shared too the importance of accuracy from both a data perspective, the data side, and also just general identification. Let's take the identification side first and speak a little bit into how important it is to have that accurate identification of the cow as she goes through the system. When you have cows that aren't just moving pens, but moving barns at times. Talk about identification and how are you able to monitor accuracy of which cow is who and where she's going throughout the different stages of her lactation and lifetime.
Yes, so to keep efficiencies high, we move all of our transition animals into the same barn. So whether cow dries off in the robots or dries off in the parlor, they all meet back in the transition barn and do their dry period together, the calve in together, and then they do the fresh cow pen for 2 weeks together. So the biggest thing for us on identification is who's wearing a collar and who does not have a collar at this point. So we're like I said, we're working on that avenue of what do we do if all of our cows have collars on, and how do we manage 2 separate herds? And I think we've got some great plans, but the biggest thing for us is every cow has to have an RFID in order to go through the parlor. Until we switch to a collar system, that's the easiest way for us to make sure that everyone has accurate data. We know that the collars are easier to read because of the size of the chip that's in the collars. So that's a huge thing for us. And then, like you said, cows do move a little bit back and forth. Unfortunately, genetics are half and half, and there's still the wear on your body annually, so not everyone ages as gracefully as you, Peggy. But
Thanks, Jess.
so that's a huge thing. So every week I'm walking fresh cows and I'm monitoring that udder conformation, which is huge for us in the robot barn. The cameras, don't get me wrong, they are really good. But stacked teats or cross teats are hard because in the parlor you can make that adjustment. A robot doesn't quite have that like intuition. I'm going to put the right on the left and the left on the right. So we do a lot of that ahead of time, and then making sure that we're clearing out those codes so that way those cows are getting to the right barn. If they come down without a collar, they can't get milked. So that's a big red flag there. And then too, like we want to make sure that those veteran cows, those cows that have been in the robot barn, are making it back to the robot barn as efficiently as possible, because we know that she needs that extra milking. So ultimately, I wish every cow could make it down here, but like I said, that wear and everyone ages a little different. Like we just can't always make that happen. And two, like we want to be efficient with how we're milking cows out and making sure the right cows are in the right place at the right time for that milking. So there will be some transition back and forth. Sometimes it's mostly heifers just getting the milk speed, getting that letdown. That takes a little bit of time and some calmness to their systems. So they will go back and forth on first lactation heifers. They'll come down a little earlier sometimes. And then too, I'm walking that pen. So if you've got a nice udder, and I have seen quite a few in my day, and so like you're definitely getting a collar on if I come behind you and you're square and those teats are hung plumb, and I think you're gonna do a good job down in the robot barn. I definitely want you to be down here. So I think a lot of it is still like keen cow concepts and making sure that I'm finding the right cows. And then for us right now, it's very easy with having a collar or no collar system. But too, that'll be a big thing as we start transitioning into getting better in that transition area and having cows on collars and getting them bred more efficiently. That'll be something that we'll navigate through. But I feel confident that we can do that, and to the platforms that have come through these technology systems that have been getting increasingly better and help us do our jobs. So I look forward to what that experience might be.
So fundamentally, correct identification is the core, right? And then every other decision that you're able to make of which cow is going to go where, which one's going to be a good fit for coming to the or coming down to the robot barn, who should stay up at that parlor, and then you can make these decisions that then impact your efficiency, which is a high priority here, and your ability to just put the right cow in the right place. We also mentioned before data accuracy. So how do you monitor the accuracy of the data you're collecting? What does that look like for you?
So a lot of the times it's just simply going through our dairy software. So we use Dairy Comp. It all starts in the fresh cow pen, making sure that those cows have all the right taggings. So we're collecting it day one. And then once they come down to the robot barn, we spend a lot of time in the first 12 hours that they're down here. They get maps right away when they come down, so we're making sure all the teat coordinates are ready. And then we watch the sort gates off of that, because some cows are going to go out into the main pen, and then if there's any cows that we need a little extra attention, we're going to hold on to them, especially heifers, because we do a lot of training with them the first 4 days. So that's where we start to calculate data accuracy, and then watching how those milkings are performing on that first day, wanting to make sure that if we need to go and evaluate an udder confirmation, or whether or not a cow might potentially be 3/4 after the lactation. We're spending a lot of time looking through that data. So if we don't have the right collar on the right cow, we're going to be very confused when we get there. So we spend a lot of time making sure the transponder numbers are right, and we can do that just by visually looking at them or also by scanning them. So that's huge. Typically, we don't have any issues because we spend a lot of time quality controlling, especially when we're collaring heifers, to make sure those numbers are accurate going into the system. So, but that is huge. If the transponder number isn't right or isn't in, that girl's going to come down and she's going to have to wait. And for us, cow comfort, making sure those cows, because they've already went through a fresh cow check in the morning before they got mapped, we're trying to get them looked at and mapped as efficiently as possible. So we try to make sure that the collars are prepared before they come down. And the veteran cows are usually so easy. And as far as quality of collars too, we really haven't had any issues as far as like wear and tear. We have very minimal headlocks, so maybe that has helped, but I think we've only had a handful of collars that have been unresponsive when we've come down to the robot barn.
So you just mentioned that you don't have a lot of lockups in this barn. So what was that decision process like a couple of years ago when you and the team here started designing what this facility would look like for 30 Lely robots? And what geared you in that direction to move away from headlocks and have more just open rail space?
Yes, so actually in our conventional system, we are all open rail. I think we know we can stock cows a little heavier that way. I think most large dairies do know that. It might not be the most efficient sometimes to get them, through a palpation rail, but we knew with the robot system, we wanted to keep it very cow comfort focused. And we wanted cows to be able to move freely throughout that barn and just do their job, do their job and enjoy what they do, just like us, right? And so and when we wanted to work cows, we wanted to make sure the critical cows were coming to us, or cows that we need to see on vet check day, versus having a whole pen locked and multiple pens. We have 10 pens of cows here. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't limiting cows from that milking time. I think that's a huge aspect when you're in robots and having headlocks. If you have cows locked up, they're not getting milked. So that's all free time percent. The stocking density of robots is different than that of a freestall barn. We're constantly working with different stages, trying to maximize the efficiency in those robots, but letting the robot also tell us, okay, hey, this is where I'm at for free time. Now your cows are starting to stack up, and we're starting to jeopardize other animals from getting in the box because we have to fetch more cows. So that was a huge thing for us, is we wanted to make sure that we can maximize that time for them to get in and to milk, and then just focus on the cows that needed our direct attention. Mm-hmm. And that also helps because then all of our streamline is right down the center of our barn, so our herds people just have to work the pens, work the small sort pens versus the entire barn, and that saves a lot of time. So I think that was the biggest thing, was we knew with the robots we wanted to maximize some labor efficiency, and in order to do that and allow cows to be cows, we needed to put that streamline down the center and make it an easy access opportunity for the people and for the cows.
Yeah, so there's really some design aspects that came into play for optimizing efficiency of the barn layout for employees, but also giving cows that opportunity to be able to spend as much time as they possibly can, not locked up, and doing what they need to do. Every opportunity they can to be eating or to get milked or to be resting. And so what have you found to be kind of the sweet spot for the way that you group cows and select who goes where? So have you adapted a grouping strategy in this particular setup that's really worked for you to be efficient and hit your marks that you want to hit with your cows?
Yes, so I think when we came into like I said, it was a blast off here of technology, and coming into these robots, I think we were so focused on, we have to make sure the robots are working, because most of the time when you talk to a robot farm, it's like, oh, well, how many maintenance calls did you have? So the first few years we focused so heavily on just, let's make sure the robots are working and that the cows are getting milked and we'll be fine. And we kind of forgot, managing robot cows is a little different, but when you're at our size, like you're managing groups. So we have just in the last year and a half gone to stages of lactation, as well as first lactation are separated. And that's a lot to do with different settings as far as 3D cameras when we're censoring cows in, and then some differences on inflation sizes. So from there, then we went to early lactation, early to mids, and we just felt we had a group of nutritionists come in, and we just felt like that was a direction we really wanted to look at to maximize those milkings without sacrificing from different stages of lactation. And that was huge. So when we went from the mids and then we created 2 late lactation pens, we were able to open up that access for our fresh cows to get in and to take that pressure off, and then to feed her right without worrying about how much feed can we drop while she's milking. And then too, for the late lactation girls, now they get a few more months of vacation because they don't have to be pushed quite as hard. They can come up and milk when they want. We work with a physiology of lactation that like we all talk about, but sometimes we forget. And then robots, like we live and breathe on it. And so it was a great, opportunity for us. And I think we've really reaped the benefits from that program. We just see cows peaking earlier and also longer. We got the persistency that we were hoping for, but without the cost of feeding our late lactation cows in the pen. So I think that was huge, and is an opportunity that if you are a robot dairy that has more than a few pens or a couple robots, like look at that opportunity and what does that look like, because you can do different things because your free time changes. Because when you have a late lactation pen that's averaging 2.5 milkings a day, you can put a few more cows in that pen and then leave some more opportunity and space for your fresh cows. So right now, our early lactation cows, there's about 55 to 60 cows per box, versus our late lactation pens, we can get up to 72 cows per box, which is quite a bit more. And I know when you have jerseys and robots, you really can maximize that box time, because they're just very, very curious creatures, versus we have all Holsteins in there. They kind of do what they do, and they're more docile and less licking everything. So I think it's no different than if you're a large dairy. It's really no different than how you group cows today. It's just we're looking at different times. No different than looking at turns per hour in the parlor. And if you have a heifer group, that pen usually takes a little bit longer. So for us, when we made that change, it was like almost 10 pounds of milk that we gained, and just cows were comfortable, and fetch lists went down because we gave the time to the cows who needed it. And then the cows who were comfortable relaxing, and typically were the fresh cows, now they're relaxing a little bit more because they don't feel that pressure of having to get up when we're making those fetches during the day.
Wow. So you've been able to really take the data that has been available to you and use it to make meaningful change within grouping and within the ability to look at how can you really meet each group by stage of lactation, where they're at with what their needs are, and put them in community with each other. And in the meantime, you're going up on production for the cows, especially those cows that have the ability and are in that part of their lactation where they can keep rising. And then you also have been able to save on fetch time, which means less cow touches and less labor and less disruption in the pens. And that was kind of part of the whole reason for having these systems in the first place between the robots and the tech, right?
Oh, exactly. I mean, we, down in the robot barn right now, we do all of our own ultrasounding, and it shaved 45 minutes off of our vet check. Wow. And in the winter time, we're trying to get through there as fast as we can, even though with having a neutral pressure barn, it stays quite a bit warmer than a freestall. It was just like, oh my gosh, we're done we can feel our toes, we can feel our fingers, the writing is legible. It was a huge difference, and I don't know why, we had kind of pushed it off. We had another consultant tell us as well, and it was just that's kind of a big change. But I think that's been a huge thing. We took on this data age by storm when we put in the 18 and then the last 12, and it was huge. And it was really just learning how to take all of that data and make it work best for you, like you said, and make sure it works for the cows, because that was the reason we built the barn, and we wanted cows to be comfortable. And so I think those are those little win moments that we're looking back at now. We just needed to trust the system and be good herdsmen and stewards that we already are, and just the rest will come in and the cows will do what they have to do. And I think that's the biggest thing, just trusting your instincts and then trusting the cows. They will perform.
Yeah. When you were talking about some of the suggestions for pen changes, was some of that from Polly?
Polly is one of my favorite people.
Anyone who listens to Up Level Dairy regularly, they know Polly Paul, and typically we talk about the dairies that he's really had to help come back from being in some pretty tough positions. But in your case, this is a good to great story of how you were able to just find that right person that could see things differently.
I think too, you have to find, when you get into some of these like large sizes, you have to find people that come in and test yourself and make sure that they not only like challenge you but remind you that you know what you're doing. And there's times as a dairy manager, like we have 3,200 cows, I have 2,500 heifers, and I have 30 dairy employees. Like sometimes I get a little lost. And too, when you get to this size, like I love cows. If I could just spend all day with my cows and not have to sometimes worry about my people, but again, I love my people. But we get out of our zone and out of our lane and forget some of the things we have to manage. And I think you find the right people and they remind you and challenge you. And I think that is the biggest thing at our size and as a young professional. You need to find those connections. And I'm so glad Polly walked into my life and that he was able to help and challenge and just remind me that you can work as hard as the next person, but I'm here to make sure that you're better than the next person. So that was incredible. And like I said too, then we had a pair of nutritionists that came in and we were talking the same things. And I'm, like I said, cowgirl through and through. So if you're telling me that I can maximize the efficiency on my cows and help them be the rock stars that they are, because I've hoped that my genetics have gotten them there, exactly where I want to be. And we've talked about it. I don't want to strive for average. I want to be above that. So you find the right people and you put them on your team and you push the envelope.
And it's fun when you talk about allowing the genetics to really show, because for one, you do a lot to make sure that you have the genetics of your cows in a good spot. But I'm going to play off of your statement on genetics because I've known you for a long time and I know your family, and you come from a line of genetics that is born and bred as cow people. And so I want to first of all just give a shout out to you and your family back home at Cells Pralle, Pam and Scott and your brother and sister, because you all really have you all are cow people through and through, but you've been able to also now combine your cow sense with what's available to you from a data perspective, and also share and empower your employees through that who may not have grown up being so close to cows as you. So when you really take a step back and you look at the position that you're in now as a manager and what you have for tools at your fingertips, including the tech, including a good herd of cows and a great team of people, what's been possible for this dairy that you are most proud of?
I think the biggest thing, and you said it, Peggy, we all come from different walks of life. And I am forever grateful for my herdsman, Mary. Well, she manages the robot barn, and she comes from a 40-cow dairy. And like I said, you don't find people who see cows like my parents see cows or my grandpa saw cows, and that's not something you can train. So I'm so grateful that not only can she read the data and analyze, and she's so motivated, but she sees the cows. And I think when we're getting into operations our size, that's huge. You need to be able to still read cows and understand cows. And so she's been able to take that and empower her employees down in the robot barn and then be flexible. I throw a lot of my interns with her, and right now it's very easy for us to get that generation to understand the data before they understand the cow themselves. So you need those team members, and that is I think the biggest thing when we're talking about large dairies and investing in technology, you have to have those key leaders and those key cow people, because sometimes we don't have a lot of notice when we have to replace a herdsman, and they need to learn cows quickly, and that data provides that support back to us, so then they can have that aha moment when they're like, I see it. I see this cow, and I understand why you keep talking about what she looks like and not what the report says. That is, to me, that's one of the biggest things is there's cow. Every cow is different. So sometimes her data might look like a different cow, but similar to another cow, but she looks fine and the other one doesn't. So we just need to make sure that we're still looking for those key signs. And that's why I think finding true cow people, it is hard, but the data is going to help us get them to where we need them to be so we can express and show those changes along with that added data value. So I think that's, for me, is a huge win. And like I said, we're really looking to try to go in-house breeding. So I think too, like, they're like, oh yeah, they don't notice a cow in heat as fast as they see the cow in the spike. And then when she comes in, oh, this is what she looks like. And I'm like, yes. And now we're doing heifer checks and stuff too. They'll tell me as we're going down the line. So I think that data helps give that little bit of confidence so that way they feel qualified in making the decision. And then once they notice the little things, they start to pick up on them in the places where we don't have data and hopefully someday have data. But that's really the biggest thing is, like, you find the right person, and as long as they have the right passion and energy that they can empower the rest of the team, the training actually comes pretty naturally because they're like, oh yeah, it's on my phone, I can find that. I mean, we got the app and it was like they knew how to route cows within seconds, and I was like, it took me a month to figure that out, and I had to hit the plus sign twice, and I couldn't figure that out. But I think that's been our biggest win is like having data has been such a teaching tool, and they can see it live, and then they can look at the cow and be like, oh yeah, when you said like she has no fill, like she has no fill because her rumination is down and her activity has been down. And then it makes the steps of, okay, I see that cow, she looks kind of off, like I'm gonna make sure I do a full physical exam and check every aspect versus like, oh, she kind of looks fine, which, tends to happen when you're getting started. But the data really builds that confidence a lot faster, and then they're like so empowered to make the decision. And then we hone it back in when we get back to fresh cows, like, okay, there's little things that we're gonna look differently at.
So it's an incredible teaching tool for members of your team. And I've definitely had several guests on the podcast recently that have just talked about the importance of explaining the why behind what you do, whether it's the why behind following proper parlor protocols or any other step or aspect of the dairy. And as you talk about this experience you've had with employees and being able to see that data first, so they are seeing the why, like you're leading with the why. And then when they see the expression of the why as, say, a cow in heat, then they're able to connect the why with the what and the how. And it's this reverse approach to how many of us learned growing up on the farm, right? You see the cow express heat. You see a cow express clinical signs of illness. We grew up being able to hone in on the what. And then we learned the how, and then we learned the why. But you're able to start with why.
Yes, and I think too, just sitting in the Milkhaus, which is our education facilities, that conversation too was leading with the why and what these robots allow not only us as farmers, but as consumers and the cows to see and do. The cows get to be cows in front of them, and we can show them why with the data, and they can connect. People can connect with data a lot faster than sometimes, like my story of the one time my brother was supposed to help me with a cow that was calving, and he conveniently started playing a video game and she had twins and I had to pull both of them. Like they don't understand that. But when you can pull up like the milking data and they're like, oh my gosh, you can see all of that? Like, or
is
like,
that the aha moment?
Yeah, like how long she was eating. And I was like, well, yeah, typically a cow spends 3 to 5 hours eating, but this is exactly when she went and ate, and I can tell she probably ate more now than later, and this is how many times she chewed it. And they're like, what? So I think too, like, it's for employees, but also for consumers as well. Like, we just hosted 4th grade students here, and they're just like baffled that I can see all of my cows on my phone, and I know who they are, and not all of them, of course, because there's just a couple around here, but I think too it creates another connection and conversation that we expected, but because it's data driven, the youngest generation can connect so much faster, and they're excited about it because they're like, they'll go home and tell their parents, like, did you know? And for me, it's a huge win because it's not about tractors and the GPS and driving themselves. Like, yes, my cows drive themselves because their data tells me when they need to see me. It's a great why for my employees, but it's even a better why and connects the visitors and consumers to what is a life in a cow here at Miltrim Farms?
Yeah, and you just really connected a lot of dots here. You've connected the dots from just the identification and the data to the actionable items to changes that you've been able to make that are all driven by that, but you brought it back full circle to using all of this to empower employees to be of even higher value and to your team, but more excited about their work and more understanding and motivated by the data, but also bringing in this bigger perspective of what does this mean for the perception of dairy with anyone who sets foot at Miltrim Farms. And as you said, you are set up here to host a lot of people and children and groups and everything else here in the Milkhaus attached right to the robot barn. This is the event center right here on the farm that we're in right now. But really, as you articulate this, it just reminds me of what I always admire so much about you, Jessica, and that is just the mindset that you truly have. And that's why I always invite you to be part of our one word series on the Up Level Dairy podcast, where you pick a word for the year. And this year, your word that you chose was presence. And so that was about 6 months ago that we sat down and we recorded that podcast, and you talked about what presence was going to mean for you heading into 2024. So here we are, almost 6 months later.
Yes. And I am so grateful that we get to have these conversations and too, Peggy, you pushed me so much. And when I picked presence and trying to be present this year after a year of forward, and I'm very good at the forward because growing up on a dairy, in a small dairy, we learned how to work hard. And when you get to this size, and I always wanted to manage cows and work with cows and never knew that it would articulate to people, but I grew up in lots of sports teams and things like that. So I knew how to work with people, but it gets challenging some days. And so the forward was easy because you're just going and right along, you're talking and making these conversations and you're getting the work done. And so the first 6 months have been good. We enjoyed the first couple of months and we were just exploding and beaming, and because all of our forward had gotten us to that point, and now we're at that, okay, yeah, we're all the things that we need to get done and we still have to get done. But don't forget about the time for yourself, the time for your family, the time for the hobbies. And that's not just me, that's my people. We had a big year. We got a lot of things changed. We had a lot of change. And for a lot of people, that's hard. It's hard for me. My mom's always you would be the perfect cow because you cannot handle change. Your emotions just take over when you make change. So again, too, part of growing up is handling some of those things. But I think too, when I start thinking about being present, it kind of brings that, that naiveness of how my emotions, I need to work on those too. And make sure that I'm present not only for my people, because I'm very good at distracting myself from myself, but it's been a great year. I think we're having even better conversations around continued cow comfort, animal health protocols. What does the next couple years look like, and how do we make sure that we are present in this moment so we're ready for those next few years? Ooh. So it's been good, but I have to say there's been days where I've been maybe a little too hard on myself because I want to push those buttons, and I want to get to those places. So if you're another dairy manager that's hitting that stride, you're not the only one. And two, like I said, you've got to find those people. And for me, it's been you and Polly and my family, just making sure that we're still pushing the goals, but hey, slow down, check in, take some time for yourself, because a lot of us dairy kids, we're really good at working. We're not so good at playing sometimes, I guess.
Right. It's way easier to keep going forward than it is to stand still, right? I want to also just bring out something that you shared this when we did your one word episode when we talked about presence, and it stuck with me, and it reminds me of what you talked about a little bit earlier. You gave a basketball reference to being on the defense, right? But you shared something that your mom, Pam, had told you about being present and being in the moment. And do you remember what that was?
Yes. I remember what it feels like to sit in an empty gym.
Yeah.
So, when we talked about it, some days you just need to find your perch in the barn and just watch cows, and you get those feelings sometimes, and maybe it's not always empty, but it's at the end of the day when an employee comes in and he's like, you know what, we had a good day, and then it's that little bit of silence in the office, and you're just like, that felt good. And it's just like walking into that empty gym and the lights are on and kind of dim, and you're just like, this is the glory. This is what it feels like. So I think that's the biggest thing is like, finding those moments and even the littlest things of the day, even if it's not when I'm walking cows or if it's just walking in the heifer barn and it's super quiet and you're just like, they're happy, they're healthy. And for my people too, I hope that they find their court moment and that it's humbling and they feel good when they go home.
It's that moment when you realize that you can play just for fun, right? Basketball reference, right? And you were like a star basketball player in your day.
Yeah, getting a little slower now.
I'm guessing your name is probably on the high school gym in Humbird.
Not quite. I do have a little name plaque in the Dells for being a 1,000-point scorer, but it's just one of many things. And I think we get to have a lot of fun conversations, but I can't take credit for a lot of things. I've had great mentors, whether it be through junior Holstein, my parents, 4-H, college, like that's huge. And I think too, like those are the people you think about in that quiet gym. So I'm grateful that we get to have this because those are the great things that you have to remember too, even when it's not been the best day. Like you've always got those cheers coming from the stands, and I'm glad that you're one of my people, one of my favorite fans.
I have my Jessica pennant. And I will wave it, and I will cheerlead for you. I will not join the basketball team with you because only if you don't want to win. And when you talk about your team and leading by example, that's what you want for your people. And you want that. You care so deeply about your team here, Jess. And it's very evident, not just in what you say, but how things run here. And just the value of you taking the time to set your own intention for the year, to cultivate a few moments, even when it's hard to do it. Cultivate a couple of moments where you just are able to have those empty court times where you're able to sit back and appreciate what is going on and how it's impacting the people. That's what culture comes from, is your leadership and your ability to do that. And I hope that some of your team, which is now not a basketball team or a dairy judging team or a dairy quiz bowl team, but now a team of employees, that's something that they learn from you too, is just how to cultivate a little bit of presence in their own lives, so that they too can step back and look at the bigger picture, look at that court, and be able to just play for fun. And hopefully that's what you are able to do a little bit more too this year. You just heard from Jessica Pralle Trimner, dairy manager at Miltrim Farms in Athens, Wisconsin. This is part of the High Performance Mindset series powered by NEDAP. NEDAP is future-proofing dairy farms by revolutionizing cow-side care through technologies and activity monitoring, cow locating, milk metering, and identification. Listen for more episodes in this series and find the links in our show notes to more episodes in the NEDAP High Performance Mindset series, as well as Jessica's most recent episode when we caught up with her at the beginning of this year when she shared her one word for 2024. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thank you for listening to the Up Level Dairy Podcast.